Hello, I'm Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team. And what we're going to be talking about today is Bretonnian characters in 8th. So last time I talked about Bretonnians and the way that they're going to have to change their game to compete in 8th. But now I'm really just going to focus in with their characters, because I think this is an area that in a way stayed the same, but also changed quite a bit going into 8th. So the first thing is, let's just start with your magic. Like I said before, you're going to want that level 4. It's great for casting, it's great for dispelling. It just seems to be a thing that everybody needs now is a level 4. As far as what lore you should be taking on them, I think, because you're taking level 4, it's going to be a prophetess, so you're either going to have the life, beasts, or heavens. And the one that I think is the best one is the life one. Of course, once you get the Throne of Vines off, then you can only be miscasting on a 2+, and that's going to be critical because with this model being in the middle of your lances, if she has a miscast and does like the Strength 10 template, you can lose a majority of a lance pretty quickly. So having a way out of that is really good. As well as, now that giving it charge doesn't mean that you're going to be attacking first. Adding to your toughness means that you'll be able to survive that. And as well, just even, of course, being able to heal up your knights. They don't heal up as fast as some of the other ones because it takes 2 for every one. But whenever you get to heal up Grail Knights, that's just fantastic, right? So, looking at some of the other ones, Beast is okay, has some sort of magic missiles. You can add the +1 strength and toughness, and so it can make you a little bit more offensive while defensive at the same time. I was like, I guess you could if you're just getting tired of life. And then Heavens, there's a couple of interesting spells in Heavens, but again, I just don't see it as beneficial as Life. And again, the number one thing why I like Life the best is just that 2+ to stop a miscast when you do your vines. Apart from that, when you're looking at some magic defense, having the good old scroll is always a good way to go. The chalice for the +1 to spell, that could be another way you could go. If you are taking a support level 2, and if you are, your support level 2 could be the beasts, so that you can go for that +1 strength and toughness. But if you some of the things I've seen that are good for these combos is if you take the feedback scroll and then the silver mirror, then if somebody casts a spell, you can use a feedback to do a couple of wounds, and if that doesn't finish them off, silver mirror can usually do that last wound and kill off a lord level caster pretty easily after 2 casts. So that's kind of a sneaky combination. Overall, as usual, just like in 7th, the best defense Bretonnians have is combat. You're going to be in combat turn 2, and as long as you target the units that those casters are in, you can kill them, and, of course, if they're dead, they're not going to be casting against you. Another thing, if we go to the next thing, let's look at BSBs. With the way the errata is, it seems that now you actually don't need to take a BSB with Bretonnians. However, I would highly suggest that you always do. There's not really, it's a free upgrade. It helps so much in 8th with all the rerolls for all the leadership tests. You just might as well take it. Now, a big thing that changed from 7th to 8th is it used to be, or I used to say, that with Bretonnians, you don't need any defensive gear, because if you're getting attacked back yourself, you've done something wrong. Well, that's just isn't the case anymore with 8th. Now you get the charge. They could be hitting first. There's step up. There's all the support attacks. You could be having a lot of attacks going against your BSB. So I think now it's more important to make it more defensive. And at the same time, there's a lot of good utility items and virtues you could be taking that you might as well have on your BSB while you have them. Some of the ones are the virtue that lets you increase a charge by d6. There's also the one that has +1 strength to all your horse attacks in one round of combat, and whereas that might have not given a big benefit in 7th, in 8th, where you could have lances of 15+ characters, all of a sudden them being strength for horses is very important. So I would say when you take them, don't worry about making them the combat res machine that we do in 7th, because really now when you're going to be winning combats, you're probably going to be winning them by quite a bit, and if you didn't do enough to take away their steadfast, then it's not going to matter what your combat res anyway. So with that, I would just be looking at those little utility virtues or items, and then just take something to give them a little bit more defense, whether it's a way to re-roll your armor save like the Grommel Helm, or whether it's just something as simple as an enchanted shield. So that's what I do with them. The next thing is looking at a lord. Now when I was first looking at a lot of armies for 8th, a lord general is pretty much a needed thing, just because leadership is so critical, and you always need to have that good leadership just to pass all these tests you're going to be taking. However, when you look at Bretonnians, I'm not overly convinced. And the reason for that is because you only go from leadership 8 across the board with your knights to being leadership 9. And the thing is, as well, is that we also have the synergy with the BSB, which we already said we're going to be taking. So when you already have a re-rollable leadership 8, is it really worth it to be paying 200 plus points to get to a re-rollable leadership 9? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You know, there's even that item you could take where you get the +1 leadership for one turn, so it's re-rollable leadership 10. But really, I think the majority of the times, it's going to be fairly rare when you're failing that leadership 8. So you might just want to be making that prophetess your general and save your points, because as always with Bretonnians, even though it's really tempting to have all these neat characters, you're better off just taking more units and knights. So I'd be keeping characters to a minimum, like I was talking about before. So, you know, if you're really having a problem with leadership, you know, you're fighting a lot of fear armies and you're finding you're being screwed over a lot, or maybe you're going against a lot of armies that have modifiers to your leadership, so all of a sudden, you know, you might be -2, so an 8 just goes to a 6, and if you took that leadership 9, then at least you'd have a 7. You know, if you're dealing with that, maybe take your lord. Otherwise, I think you're fine not even taking a Bretonnian lord in 8th. The next thing you want to kind of look is the kinds of utility characters. There's so many different combinations you can do with Bretonnians, with all their lores, all their items, all the common items. There's really tons of things to do, and probably the most common one that people are going to be looking at now is the one where you can get the heroic killing blow. Now that they have routed it out so you can actually use it along with magical lances, there are a lot of different combinations out there that can help it out. Oddly enough, one of the best combinations is not with a magical weapon, but with the magical armor. Your Cuirass of Fortune, where you get to reroll 1s to wound. That seems to be one of the things that actually makes the biggest impact. But, you know, one of the problems with that is, although it looks really cool that, okay, I can go and I can killing blow a dragon, I can killing blow this giant, the thing is that as good as you can make it for your odds still aren't that good. And so a lot of times it can just lead you throwing an expensive character into a monster and just getting yourself slaughtered. So one way I can see it as being nice is if you took it more for a psychological effect. So you can say to your opponent, oh, you know, I'm set up, I can kill your bloodthirster with this guy. And then maybe he'll be a little bit more defensive in keeping those monsters, bloodthirster, away. And then you can kind of play cat and mouse while the rest of your army goes and crushes the rest of their army. So if you're doing that, I can see that being worthwhile, and then the odd time throwing them just to try your luck. But for all the points you're putting in, I bet you overall, over all the games, that you're not going to be getting your worth back. One good utility paladin, I think, is just the Pegasus, go hunt down supporting units and War Machines paladin. You know, you can always give them the shield that gives them a 2+ save against shooting, or the rerollable save. You might want to give them a ward save to help them against cannons or something. But even then, I mean, you're probably better off with the same points going with 3 Pegasus. So a lot of times what I'm trying to get to here is that there's a lot of cool things you can do with paladins to say, like, okay, it'd be really good for this, really good for that, but in the end, they're really not worth it. The only one that I do like is a stubborn paladin. So we've always had stubborn in Bretonnians. There was that one virtue, you can take it, make your guy stubborn, but it was kind of useless at the same time because you couldn't join a unit. But now that there's a Crown of Command, any army can take this, and for Bretonnians, this can be a big deal. And so what that could mean, especially, is if you just have this on some paladin, on some plain lance of knights, you can have the majority of your knights going one side to crush it, and have your stubborn knights go not in lance formation, but a big long single rank, and then just go over to hold up the other side. And that can be a great way where, you know, you can just be ranking up or crushing up all these points from destroying the army over here, and then come back in the later part of the games. And it's all because of this paladin with this 35-point item that made the whole unit stubborn. So, you know, that's something that I think has some, you know, real virtue to, and something that could be looked into. But for the vast majority of all the different combinations, I don't really think it's worth it. You might want to get a couple of magic weapons in there in case you're fighting, you know, ethereal or anything, but otherwise, I would stick more to getting more knights. So anyway, that's all I want to talk about Bretonnian characters. And next time we're going back to orcs and goblins, and we're going to talk about the giant. So see you then. Bye.